Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel. I've come across even more XRP chart analysts who insist that XRP is incredibly coiled up and ready for the next leg up to new all-time highs. Now, of course, there are other analysts who think we may need to wait just a little bit longer, even if it's just a span of a few weeks. But even they would agree, roughly speaking, this is the moment when that would happen. So whether it's today, tomorrow, next week, next month, we're about there, folks. And that is effectively what I'm seeing from every XRP chart analyst that I follow. But before going further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a financial background of any kind. I am not offering financial advice, and you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. As I record this video, it is 11:23 p.m. Sunday, May 11th, 2025, and XRP is $2.40. Bitcoin is just over $104,000, so mostly flat over the last 24 hours. It's not going to stay there. So I came across this post this morning. This caught my attention. This is from 9:22 a.m. Central Time. This is from analyst Will Clemente. He shared this Bitcoin price chart and he said, "Feels like you're going to need a real tangible announcement on the China front to keep things moving here locally. Momentum's starting to stall out on Bitcoin for the first time in a bit." And so he was concerned perhaps we might see a bit of a retracement to the downside after seeing this notable surge and Bitcoin getting fairly close to its all-time high of roughly $108,000. And of course, when he says China front, of course, what he's referencing is the tariff situation. And what's interesting is the timing of this, because again, he posted this at 9:22 a.m. and he's thinking, hey, the market must still be concerned if we're gonna, if we're gonna put the pedal to the metal here, we're gonna need some good reason to do that as collectively as market participants. And he was obviously believing that if you get some good news on the China tariff trade deal front, that would be the thing to do it. Hours later, we found out that's happening. And folks, I've been saying this since the tariff nonsense and the fear began. It's going to go away because that's obviously the case. There's a lot of posturing and huffing and puffing and all that. Okay, but that's very obviously what it was. But of course, something was ultimately going to happen. And so we got this headline. I think it was either late afternoon, early evening. Today, though, here's the headline from USA Today. Trump officials say trade deal reached with China, but details remain unclear. Okay, so something was worked out. It's agreeable to both nations. That's what's being shared from the Trump White House. And although we don't know the specifics, and you may like it or not like it once all the details come out, what we're being told is that the countries did agree on that. And so I'm not going to read this article. I just wanted to point that out and highlight that we're going to find out tomorrow morning. That's what we're being told. Take a look at this. Bessent said the White House will conduct a complete briefing on the morning of May 12th to discuss details of the agreement. So, as a result of this, there's been all sorts of commentary about how the stock market, oh my God, it's going to rip tomorrow because, of course, it's stupid because it's old technology and old setups. It doesn't trade 24/7, 365 like crypto. And so they're saying here, stock market's going to rip. And maybe they're right. Maybe it will to some degree, but it's already off the lows. Because how low did the S&P 500 get? Like a little over 4,900, I think, something like that. And what is it now? Like 56, 5,700, somewhere around there. So it already bounced. From the lows, I think it was up somewhere in the neighborhood of like 11%, something like that, which is big for the stock market. And although that could be like 5 minutes in crypto, I get it. But for the stock market, the S&P 500, that's a big deal. And so after hitting the lows, it already bumped up. So what does that tell you? Well, it definitely tells you that some people already had sufficient confidence to put money back into the stock market. That's the reason that it rose, and that always made sense. And so you got to wonder how much of this was already priced in. And so I'm not saying that the market can't or won't move to the upside, but the stock market and crypto, they tend to move in tandem, right? Because they're risk-on assets, and that includes XRP, of course. So isn't it kind of interesting that despite this very good news, we didn't see a damn thing happen to the crypto market, which trades 24/7, 365? I think it's weird. The Kobasi letter pointed that out. Here's a Bitcoin USD chart they shared from this afternoon. Effectively no reaction at all in Bitcoin as the U.S. announces a trade deal with China. And that's a very good point. Nothing happened in crypto. We're just moving sideways. So was there already an expectation that this was indeed the case and we shouldn't be surprised by this? Well, we're going to find out tomorrow. I mean, I won't be surprised if the market goes up. It's just fascinating that crypto folks are like, eh. I mean, at least so far. At least so far. You know, we're in the age of information. Information travels instantaneously. It's not like we got to wait to see people respond because there's a carrier pigeon sending out the message of what's happened to Bitcoin and XRP holders. Like, that's not how this works. So it's just fascinating it hasn't moved. Now, it's still going to ultimately rip to the upside. Global liquidity has increased substantially, and the vast majority of the time when that happens, the crypto asset class follows, including XRP. So we should expect that. And in fact, and I shared this yesterday, but it's worth repeating, there was this post from the blockchain backer. I mean, given what just happened, I wanted to repeat this in case some of you missed it. Here you have the crypto total market cap excluding Bitcoin, so all of the altcoins on your screen. But there's a specific indicator at the bottom called the altcoin breadth flip signal, which is an indicator that the blockchain backer created himself. And here's what he wrote just yesterday morning. The one-day time frame breadth indicator just flipped to the on position. It doesn't give insight into short-term momentum or if prices will correct sideways for the weeks ahead. But what it has done for the past 5+ years is confirm the bottom being in, including last September. Well, that's interesting. So he has this indicator which hasn't been wrong-footed for over half a decade, and it just flipped to on. Well, that means even if we go down in the short term, it's not time to panic unless this thing is finally breaking. But I don't think it makes sense for it to break, given everything else that has been happening in the world. All of the tariff fears will subside if they haven't already. Markets are going to run. It'll be super interesting to see what happens in the stock market on Monday. I just think it's peculiar that crypto hasn't run, and it makes me wonder, is there a chance that the stock market won't either? Because you would think if this wasn't priced in, then both would just go. So why isn't crypto now? Well, the only thing I can think of is that it's already priced in, but we'll just have to see. Maybe the stock market does run tomorrow. You guys can tell me what you think in the comment section below. I'm not going to take a bet on that. I'm telling you straight up, I don't know. I just find it fascinating. Here's a post, and stick with me because I got a ton of XRP specific stuff which you're going to want to hear. I just want to do this in a particular order. I want to share this post first, though. Bitcoin USD chart on your screen from Chart Analyst Mustache. And he says, Bitcoin will close this week with a bullish MACD cross. Probably the biggest signal you can get at the moment. The last time this happened was in October 2024 and October 2023. Both times were followed by an insane rally for crypto. My friends, I got to ask you, are you not finding the confluence of all these events very interesting? This is a moment that looks on the charts fantastic for Bitcoin. This is the moment on charts that looks fantastic for XRP. And then on a macro level, you're looking at the tariff crap. Looks like it's winding down unless something last minute goes disastrously wrong, but it sounds like everything's actually going to be winding down. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's more deals to be worked out, and that can take a span of months, but the big one, China, it looks like that one's actually already worked out. So we'll see what the details are. I mean, in theory, fine, there could be stupid details and it spooks the market, but if there are stupid details, I'm just kind of surprised that China would go along with it. If it weren't to some degree neutral or agreeable, I kind of be surprised. It's going to be something that should work one way or another for both parties. But isn't that a lot of confluence? And there are other things, of course, too, in global liquidity. So I can go on. It's all happening exactly when you would want and expect it to. That's amazing. Like, I think that XRP is going to go berserk because if the market goes, you better believe XRP is going to substantially outperform. I really firmly believe that. Here's the crypto total market cap excluding Bitcoin and Ethereum. The chart's name is Total 3, and this is a post from chart analyst Malleus. He says, Total 3 supply turned into demand. However, there is another supply area above us. Therefore, I expect some consolidation around these levels first, likely in the form of a bull flag, followed by continuation higher, eventually on all-time highs. So he still believes that we're going to go higher even if we have to consolidate first. Now, if markets do go berserk tomorrow, and maybe crypto will just play catch-up if that's the case, I don't know. Just note that he posted this somewhere like close to 10 to 12 hours, I think roughly, before the tariff news. So if that does materially impact the markets on Monday, Give him a break on that. Maybe you don't have to wait. And he wasn't even promising that you have to wait sideways anyway, or go sideways first anyway. The key takeaway is, yeah, ultimately number go up. Alts are just going to go absolutely insane. Here's an exciting one too. This is from chart analyst Mikey Bull Crypto, Ethereum USD chart on the screen. Ethereum to $10,000 can't be ruled out technically. Okay. Tons of chart analysts that I follow believe that as well. That doesn't seem preposterous. That would only be a little more than a twofold increase from the all-time high from last market cycle, which was somewhere between $4,800 and $4,900 per ETH. So if Ethereum hits that, the reason that I'll be super excited is because if XRP matches that market cap of ETH at that price level, that would be $20 roughly per XRP. That is not crazy. Now, I don't know if it's going to happen, but that is not remotely crazy. There's so many good reasons to be excited for this. I mean, hell, even if Ethereum only got back to its all-time high, well, if XRP matches just that, that would be about $10. You're still getting around that double-digit price action, even if XRP overtakes ETH and Ethereum just supremely disappoints this cycle, which I don't think is likely. I don't think it's going to disappoint that much. I just think XRP is going to substantially outperform it. But everything is so perfectly queued up. You know, XRP for years was beat down and artificially suppressed because of the nonsense attack from the government. And then Ethereum, after having an incredible run last cycle, it's not going to be the darling of this cycle. It's certainly not. But its price also went into the gutter. It's just nice to see that it's had a reversal, which was totally predictable. I was insisting that was going to happen. I've been talking about that a lot over the last couple months, in fact. Here's a post from chart analyst Ali Martinez, XRP USD chart. And all of this seems absolutely safely grounded in reality in my mind. That's why I said, I started sharing that post and my thoughts on XRP price, potentially where it could go, by talking about ETH first. That's why when I see posts like what's on your screen right here from Ali Martinez, I'm like, yeah, it might happen. So we shared this XRP USD chart and he wrote, if the governing pattern behind XRP is this symmetrical triangle, the target could be $15. And you can see he's got this symmetrical triangle going back 2 cycles, back to when it peaked on January 4th of 2018. That's the date that XRP had its, what used to be the all-time high anyway. Now we got a new one in January, obviously. Finally, after over 7 years. So that was good to see anyway. But I look at this and I see how various chart analysts come to their conclusions, you know, looking at different chart formations, metric zone, and so forth. And so many of them come to roughly the same spot. And you do have extremes. Like on the lower end, you'll have, you know, analysts that are like XRP is more likely to peak around like $8 to $10. And that's fine. Some say it's going to peak, you know, over 30, 35 bucks, something like that. And so maybe the sweet spot really is somewhere in between. We'll find out together. But, you know, I look at this and none of that is crazy. If you're talking that range, none of it's crazy. Because on the lower end, if we don't have as exciting an alt season as we'd like, well, yeah, maybe you do end up on the lower end. But if a crazy amount of money flows in and it's on the higher end, maybe the people talking about $30 XRP, maybe they are right. But I mean, I don't know, if you had to guess, like, what would you say? Is it more likely to be somewhere in between then? I don't know. Here's a post from chart analyst Cryptolica, and he's just been beating this drum. He is so confident in this. He keeps repeating this. XRP price chart on your screen. He believes it's going to $9 to $10. So that is one of the more conservative expectations, but that's fine. $9 to $10. And then there are some that say, okay, it depends on what formations play out here. And so there's like a strong path and a weaker path. And chart analyst Simca is one of those. This is an XRP USD price chart. For the sake of time, I'm not going to read this whole post, though. If you want to pause, you can. I'll just scroll down so you can see what he's talking about here. But this is the relevant chart. I'll pause here in case you want. This is the first chart he shared. I'm not going to be commenting on this one, but just in case you want to read through and look at that, just want to share it with you. This is the one that's relevant in terms of where he thinks this thing's going. So if we have the weaker path, he still believes that XRP is going to peak this cycle at $8, which is one of the more conservative estimates, price predictions. But he's not convinced that's necessarily going to be the case. There's a path forward in which XRP substantially outperforms, and as you can see, you get up closer to that $30 range. So there's a lot of uncertainty here. So anywhere in there seems pretty sane. Nobody knows. Here's the truth. Nobody knows. But I firmly believe, based on historic precedent, that anywhere in there is absolutely sane. Like, it's sane to believe that might happen. Anywhere in there. Because that type of stuff has already happened in crypto. We know that type of thing is possible. That's the world we're living in. That's why this is so exciting. All we have to do is have the alt season, and then XRP is going to land probably somewhere in there. That would be my expectation. Absolutely. Here's a post from chart analyst Michael Vandepop. Now, mind you, this guy suffers from XRP derangement syndrome. He does not like XRP, but he shared this post with his 786,000 followers nonetheless. And he said, when things go absolutely vertical, that's the moment where you want to zoom out and get higher time frame entry points. The same applied for XRP. Marks the level around $1.75 as an important one for entries, and it's up 50% since then. I assume we'll attack the all-time high soon. So even somebody who irrationally hates XRP is like, yeah, we're going to hit yet another all-time high. Price discovery come. Now, he had enough egg on his face because last cycle, he was, I can't remember everything he said, but I kind of had a little fun with it. It's like, look, you are so well known. You're a well-known figure in the world of crypto. You're crapping all over XRP. I have a certain reasonable accuracy predicting prices for other coins, but then for some reason with XRP, you're always disastrously wrong. Are we just not supposed to notice that? You're a public figure in crypto, and like we can't even say, hey, you said this, looks like it was way off. Might your bias have seeped through? And so I was having a little fun saying that type of stuff. And he was, he operated in good faith on that. He responded to me. But he did say crap like that. He was talking about XRP going to like 50 cents and that's where it was going to peak or something. It was crap like that. I can't remember all the specifics. And then it ran to $2. So he had egg on his face. And so that ever since then, though, he's taken his XRP posts a little bit more seriously. I've noticed. That's all it took was a bunch of people be like, hey, you were disastrously wrong. Hey. And now he's talking about, okay, well, XRP, yeah, it's going to hit all that. So, credit where it's due. We'll take that. But yeah, much higher. In fact, take a look at this post. This is from chart analyst Leb Crypto. He said, XRP breaking out of daily Bollinger Bands and ready for next leg up to new all-time highs. Well, that's interesting. I find that particular metric very interesting because I spent over a half a year in 2024 talking about it. Starting in April with this post from Charting Guy. Look at this. This is April 16th of 2024, over a year ago. And he posted the following. XRP monthly Bollinger Bands are now the tightest they've ever been in history. 0.7 for the width. The tightest it got before this was 0.73 in 2017. 1 month before, and then he's got the rocket ship emoji. And so you can see these blue lines here, how close they got. Tightening Bollinger Bands. That was 2017. And what happened? Breadth opened up. Price rocketed. Absolutely rocketed. And then you can see last cycle, they still tightened, but it wasn't an all-time, it wasn't like a record. It wasn't the most tight they had ever been, but that still indicated as they got tight that something was about to happen. And this metric doesn't tell you if the thrust will be up or down, but when you're in a bull market, it's way more likely it'll be to the upside. So last cycle, Bollinger Bands did get tight, not the tightest ever, but tight, and it did burst, despite the SEC lawsuit, still ran up to $2. Happy to see that. But then, as of April of last year, tightest in history. So that told us something was going to happen sooner rather than later. It did take another over half a year because, when it went, it was November, after the election, November 2024. And so, if you look on a chart, that's a very small moment in time, that's 6-7 months. But when you're living through it, it feels like forever. And so if you were there, it may have felt like forever to you, but now it's way in the past and you probably barely remember it. It doesn't feel like that anymore, right? But that was the tightest in history. And in fact, the Bollinger Bands got even tighter for the next 6 months. So they're already the tightest in history and just got tighter. And I kept highlighting that throughout the rest of the year. I was like, folks, this bitch is going to go. XRP is the lowest priced against Bitcoin pretty much in history. Anytime it's even gotten in this realm, that has been a bottom signal and it's going to go. I insisted throughout the year. And wouldn't you know it, history rhymed and it did absolutely blast off. And all the chart analysts that were talking about this were absolutely right. Totally vindicated. Now, what Leb Crypto is highlighting is that the Bollinger Bands tighten out again. They're tightening up. And so he said, here again, XRP breaking out of the daily Bollinger Bands and ready for the next leg up to new all-time highs. He's not the only one saying that. Here's a post from chart analyst Steph is Crypto. And so that's the XRP USD chart, and the red lines here, that would be the Bollinger Bands. And you can see how tight they were in November, and then the breadth just opened up. Look at that. And then, but here it's tightening again. And so he simply wrote, F everyone that is bearish on XRP. Just look at this. And so that's what he's talking about. These are the Bollinger Bands. That's why it says BB right there. Bollinger Bands, my friends. He's got the little bomb graphic here. Because he believes that it's about to go. It's got tight again. Not the tightest in history, but it doesn't have to be. Very tight, though. You can see how it looked compared to when it broke out in November. Do you see the confluence of everything now? And that's why I prepared this video, the content in this video, the weight and the order that I did. Starting with the macro stuff, the big news here having to do with the trade deal with China. And we'll see what the specifics are on Monday. Your future people, maybe you already know. I currently do not. I'm very curious to see what this is, and I'm very curious to see how markets respond. I don't know, especially since crypto didn't respond. I mean, you would think that they'd go up, but again, to what degree was it already, factored in, built, baked in the cake? Is the market going to respond positively, but just a little bit rather than a lot? I don't know. We'll see. But there's a reason I went through that. What's happening in crypto markets, what's happening with Bitcoin specifically, what's happening with Ethereum specifically, and what that might mean for XRP, and then all the XRP stuff. That's the reason I did it in the order, to build up to this. It's the climax of the Moon Lambo video. You'll love to see it. I cannot wait to see how this unfolds, but as somebody that's been monitoring this literally every single day for, at this point, like 7.5 years, and I've never sold a single XRP, this is the most excited I've ever been. I got to tell you, it's the most excited I've ever been as an XRP holder. The more time passes, the more excited I get about this, because I see everything lining up like I thought and hoped that it would. Not that I could know all the specific details, but if you're talking big picture and the concepts and the points where you'd want Confluence, yes, those things, they are unfolding the way that we've been talking about throughout this whole process, the way that we would hope that it would. And I suspect it's going to continue. And one day you're going to wake up, XRP is going to be ripping again, and it's going to be melting faces. And in price discovery for the first time in over 7 damn years, it is coming. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say are right. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the Moon Lambo.